I unlocked 3 disturbing true hidden camera horror stories that will haunt your nightmares. I never should have opened that door. Seriously. It was just a regular Tuesday afternoon, but then my curiosity took a dark turn. I was sitting in my dimly lit living room, the air thick and heavy with silence. The hum of the fridge was my only company until it was shattered by a sudden crash from the back of the house. My heart raced. I tiptoed toward the sound, dread pooling in my stomach. Shadows flickered on the walls, and the cold air wrapped around me like a shroud. I paused. Did I just hear whispering? It felt like someone was right behind me, breathing down my neck. I turned quickly, but nothing. Just the stillness, pressing in like a weight. Every footstep felt like thunder as I moved deeper into the house. The once familiar hallways felt constricting, almost claustrophobic. I glanced at the old family pictures, faces frozen in time, their smiles felt sinister under the draping shadows. Suddenly there was another crash, this time louder. Something was definitely in there. I held my breath, the chill biting at my exposed skin. Was I actually hearing laughter? Or was that just my mind playing tricks on me? I clenched my fists, trying to steady my racing mind. The flashlight flickered in my hand, casting erratic beams across the walls. I stumbled into the kitchen, and my stomach twisted as I spotted one of my pots thrown to the ground, steaming as if it had just boiled over. I hadn't even cooked today. There it was, again, a soft scuttling sound from the corner, quick and abrupt. My pulse screamed in my ears, drowning out all other noise. I glanced over, but nothing was there. Just shadows consuming the edges of my vision. Then, from the darkness, I saw it. A figure. Motionless. It stood at the edge of the room, cloaked in shadows. My breath caught. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the urge to flee battling with the paralyzing grip of fear. As my eyes adjusted, it became clearer. I wasn't prepared for what I saw next. The figure shifted slightly, its gaze locking onto mine. My heart dropped. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Then, just as quickly, it vanished into thin air. Just like that. I blinked, and it was gone. A door slammed somewhere in the house. My own heartbeat echoed back in terror. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I staggered back, my body trembling, feeling the chill of the kitchen tile seep into my skin. The darkness beckoned with promises of unspeakable horrors, and the air thickened around me, pregnant with a menacing energy. My instinct screamed for me to get out, but instinct alone wasn't going to push my feet forward. Shaking, I reached for the mundania spatula left nearby, as if it could shield me from whatever haunted these shadows. Another crash echoed from the dining room, more dissonant this time, as if it were the sound of glass shattering. I moved slowly, each step deliberate, my flashlight beam cutting through the black. The kitchen was empty, but dread slithered up my spine. I stepped past the doorway to the dining room, the table dressed with hidden memories, all those family dinners, laughter nearly palpable. My breath caught as I entered. The table was now set for a meal that would never happen. Empty plates, silverware gleaming under the flickering light, as if awaiting unseen guests. Instead, I looked down to see a single fork embedded in the wood, the tip splintering the grain, its handle glistening with something dark. My heart sank as the metallic scent wafted toward me, slick and foreign. I kneeled down, examining the fork, when I heard it again, a soft whisper, ghost-like, laden with sorrow. Help me, it trailed off into silence, lingering in my mind. It was a child's voice, faint and pleading. The fork fell from my fingers, clattering against the floor, and I glanced around, feeling eyes on me, a parade of presences. Who needs help? I stammered, a whisper lost in the void. The light flickered violently, shadows dancing wildly, and I stumbled back, bumping against the wall. Then, a soft giggle pierced the suffocating silence, echoing with an innocent malice that chilled my blood. I barely had time to register the sound before the temperature plummeted, each breath crystallizing in the air in front of me. A cold hand, so small it felt like mere wisps of mist, brushed against my ankle. I glanced down, and there stood a little girl, her face obscured by strands of tangled hair. Her eyes, dark like bottomless pits, glimmered with something unholy. "Play with me," she whispered, lips curling into a smile that felt far too wide, too wrong. "Please don't leave." Panic constricted my throat as I turned to run, but the door swung shut before I could reach it, slamming with a force that rattled the windows. I screamed, the anguish stretching out into the darkness. The room twisted around me, shadows elongating, reaching out as though trying to ensnare me. The girl giggled again, and as my heart pounded wildly, I could feel her breath against my leg. I yanked at the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The darkness thickened, coiling like a snake around my limbs, squeezing, suffocating. "Don't go, please," she begged, her voice morphing into something sharp, serrated with irritation. A low grunt reverberated behind me, and suddenly the shadows split, revealing that the dining room wasn't empty after all. Shapes twisted and contorted, their faces obscured in veils of darkness, staring hungrily at me. I spun around, adrenaline coursing through my veins, and with all my strength, I lunged at the door. The instant I slammed against it, it flew open, spilling light from the hallway, but the figures in the dining room rushed forward, their distorted mouths widening in screams that I stumbled into the light, just as I heard her voice pierce the air one last time. "You can't leave, it's time to play." The last rays of brightness vanished, the door slamming behind me, plunging me back into the oppressive embrace of shadows. My breath hitched as I turned, but it was too late. The moment I glanced back, she was there, eyes wide and hungry, just inches from my face. And then, everything went black. I gasped for air, the darkness wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. My heart raced as I struggled to reconcile the void that swallowed my screams. Where had I gone? Was I still within the confines of my home, or had I somehow slipped into another realm, one steeped in fear and despair? I blinked, but nothing pierced the black. A cold sweat cascaded down my spine as the fear of lingering shadows crept closer, encircling me with their malicious intent. I tried to call out, to hear even the slightest echo of my own voice, but the air was thick, heavy with the weight of silence. But then, a sound broke through, soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on wood. It was a delicate, persistent rhythm that filled the void, and with each tap, dread flooded my senses. I realized I wasn't alone. I wanted to flee, but I stood paralyzed, as though the darkness held me captive. Then, glimmers of wet, glistening darkness began to materialize around me. Flickering, like dying embers caught in a gentle breeze. I traced their outlines, but they gave no form, no sense of reality. A low whisper, like a hushed mantra, unraveled in filaments of the air. "Join us." The tapping ceased abruptly, and just as quickly, a chorus of breathy giggles erupted around me, childlike and unsettling. My skin prickled with the disquieting sensation of being watched. The shadows twisted and morphed, no longer mere silhouettes but spectral figures, small and indistinct, their bodies swaying in a dance between worlds. As if summoned by my fear, a cacophony of whispers escalated. "Help us," they chorused, their voices grating against my nerves. "We're lost, we need you." A burning desire to escape surged within me, but my legs felt as though they'd been rendered immobile by an unseen force. The shadows began to drift closer, probing and prodding, slipping through the cracks in my resolve. I could almost feel their icy breath at my throat, their fingers trailing against my skin, leaving chills coursing through my body. "Don't you care?" A voice shrieked suddenly, piercing through the chorus, sharp and shrill like nails on glass. It belonged to the girl, the one who had smiled at me, her eyes pools of emptiness. Instinctively, I flinched back, my heart racing. Help us. Help us find what was taken. What was I supposed to help them with? Panic surged anew. The darkness thickened into an oppressive fog, wrapping around me tightly. The girl's laughter turned into howling, echoing like sirens wailing far off in a nightmarish landscape. The figures began to converge, swirling around like vengeful wraiths. I could make out their faces now, twisted with lost hopes and unfulfilled dreams. Help! I shouted into the void, desperation steeped in my voice. What do you want from me? Play, they chanted, the sound swirling, a murmur of discord that vibrated in the back of my mind. Play forever. Suddenly, my vision flickered, a burst of light tearing through the shadows. I stood on the threshold of a vision, one unbound by grim reality. I was in the living room now, but something wasn't right. The walls pulsed ever so slightly, alive and breathing, and the smell of decay wafted in the air. A soft melody wafted faintly, a tune I recognized from my childhood. I looked around, heart leaping, but the room felt like a funeral home bathed in an unsettling glow. And then, in the middle of the floor, sat an old, neglected dollhouse. Its windows were dark, and tufts of hair sprouted from its roof, like weeds reclaiming a forsaken plot of land. Enigma wound tightly in my gut as I approached. What brought me to this place? The horrifying echoes of laughter reverberated once more, reminding me that I was not truly alone. I cautiously reached for the door of the dollhouse, curious yet filled with trepidation. Help us, the whispers reignited, and I felt their presence swell around me, an invisible tide of spectral insistence. My fingers brushed the door's edge when a jarring crack erupted behind me. I turned instinctively, horrified by what I found. The living room walls twisted and melted, revealing a dark, gnarled maw. Pulsating as it breathed in and out, beckoning me to without warning, a thunderous roar filled the air, drowning the cries of the children. Darkness lashed out in jagged tendrils, crashing through the room, and something colossal began to emerge from the shadows, forcing its way into the light. Frozen in terror, I felt the walls close in, and as the grotesque shape began to solidify, my mind reeled. The child's voice returned, a mocking tingle chasing down my spine. You can't escape. You've always been meant to play. And as the horrifying figure surged toward me, I realized with abject terror I might be the next piece in their everlasting game. The maelstrom of darkness surged, and the creature unfurled itself, shrouded in shadows, its body as formless as fear itself. Mottled skin danced with grim luminescence, eyes glimmering like dying stars. I staggered backward, heart hammering wildly in my chest, choking on the oppressive air thick with dread. The whispers escalated into a gale, clamoring in an indecipherable language that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Play with us, join us, the girl's laughter echoed, tauntingly close, leaving behind a coldness that seeped into my bones. I caught a glimpse of the creature's maw, a gaping void lined with serrated teeth that seemed to pulse in time with my racing heart. The walls continued their perverse transformation, oozing with what looked like thick, black liquid that pooled at my feet, threatening to trap me in its grasp. In a surge of instinct, I turned and fled, forcing my legs to move, driven by the primal need to escape. The hallways twisted and warped around me, resonating with an uncanny rhythm. The house itself seemed to conspire against me. Every door I tried flung open into darkened spaces that yawned like hungry mouths, threatening to swallow me whole. As I tore through a doorway, I stumbled into the kitchen room that was once a haven, now a nightmarish tableau. The once gleaming counters were stained and cracked, laden with remnants of meals long forgotten. Flies buzzed in angry swarms as if attracted to the grotesque disarray. But the most unsettling sight was a tall, withered figure hunched over the stove, simmering an unidentifiable mass, its back turned toward me, the shadows draped heavily over its form. Help us, echoed in a mournful tone, now unrecognizable, layered with grief and despair. The girl's voice was now intertwined with something deeper, darker, a well of sorrow that reached into the very core of my being. I felt my resolve weaken, as if the shadows were mixing with my thoughts, planting seeds of doubt about my very existence. Summoning a flicker of courage, I approached the figure, my heart pounding like war drums. "Are you?" It turned suddenly, its face a twisted marionette of agony and madness. Hollow eyes sunk deep into its face held a hollowness that mirrored the black void swallowing my world. The figure lifted a hand, dissected and skeletal, pointing directly at me. "You must bear witness the price of play." Before I could turn to flee, the kitchen warped and spun, flickering like a faulty light bulb, as agony and laughter intertwined in a symphony of chaos. The walls pulsated with life, revealing eye-shaped carvings that blinked open and closed, watching my every move. With a guttural roar, the creature from the shadows surged into view behind me, its mass thickening and contorting, narrowing the space I could retreat into. I darted through another door, bursting into a hallway that spiraled deeper into this hellish maze. Each step sent a wave of dread washing over me as sensations of dread crawled up my spine. The whispers returned, wrapping around my mind like a serpent. "Find us, we are waiting." The walls grew closer, shadows stretching ominously, and then I saw it, more dolls lining the walls, grotesque and twisted in bizarre poses, their painted faces leering at me with knowing smiles. I blinked in disbelief, but there was no mistaking the winks they exchanged, as if they shared a secret language only they understood, a complicit pact of terror. Then the electricity in the air shifted, as if the very house was breathing out a malevolent curse. I turned at the far end of the corridor, and the dollhouse once more came into view, now blaring with an unearthly glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. It called to me, but not out of compassion, something far worse. A savage hunger lurked behind its facade. "Play with us, enter." They beckoned in a chorus of childlike voices, harmonizing over one another. The girl's voice drifted to the forefront again, fragile and desperate. "Help us find what was taken from us." Just as I summoned enough force to step away from the malignant pull of the dollhouse, an incomprehensible roar erupted, shaking the very foundation. The hallway shattered as the creature slammed against the far wall, its presence erupting in a violent cascade of otherworldly energy that ricocheted through every inch of the house. That I was thrown back as room after room distorted, their edges fracturing like broken glass, revealing swirling oblivion beyond. The dollhouse trembled at my feet, and without my consent, the door creaked open, beckoning me in. "Please don't," I begged, terror filtering into every word. But the house roared in defiance, and something unseen coiled around my wrist, yanking me backward into the pulsating darkness. As the flickering lights faded away, I heard their laughter clear, joyous, echoing in a deafening crescendo, enveloping me completely. "You'll never leave, you've joined the game." With one last desperate shout for help, I felt myself slipping away into that dark embrace, a last shred of consciousness merging with their insidious game. What lay ahead was an unknown horror I could not fathom, but their call grew fainter, fading until it was a mere whisper, and in that chilling moment, I understood, perhaps it wasn't just my fate at stake. The truth of the house, and the children within it, loomed ahead, tangled in a nightmarish tapestry I could no longer escape. A final, sinister thought lingered in my mind as I was pulled into the abyss. Perhaps the game was only just beginning. The chill of the dollhouse's interior wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud as I crossed the threshold. It was impossibly small, a miniature replica of the house I just fled, but each room was alive with palpable dread. The walls were painted in garish, childish colors, nauseatingly cheerful, yet each corner seemed to harbor something sinister, like a well-placed trap lying in wait. As I took my first step inside, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing me within. Panic surged, beating wildly in my chest, but the laughter echoed louder than my fear, a cruel melody of delight that reverberated in my bones. A single light flickered overhead, illuminating the hollow-eyed dolls arranged in grotesque displays, their presence a mockery of innocence. Each painted mouth seemed poised to whisper secrets of woe. "Join us, play with us." The voices of the children reverberated, swirling together in a symphony that drummed against my skull, daring me to relinquish my sanity. The floor creaked underfoot, the little wooden boards bending and twisting as though they contained a heartbeat of their own, alive and throbbing. As I moved deeper into the dollhouse, one doll caught my attention, a porcelain figure with a cracked face, its eyes seemingly alive with sorrow. It wore a tattered dress that flowed like moth wings, its fingers outstretched toward me as if pleading for release. I reached out, drawn by a mix of pity and horror, when a cold wind gusted through the room, snuffing out the light that I and the inky darkness, the whispers transformed into shrieks, a cacophony that enveloped me. "Help us! Help her!" A chill rapidly crawled over my skin, tightening its grip, clawing into my throat. I gasped, wrapping my arms around myself in defiance, but the storm of voices pushed against my resolve. When the lights flickered back to life, the doll was gone. A deep sense of loss clawed at my insides. "What have they taken?" I murmured to the empty air, feeling the weight of their despair. It was then I noticed the small door at the far end of the room, slightly ajar, a dim light beckoning from within. Cautiously, I moved toward it, each step echoing too loudly within the suffocating silence. I peered inside to find a small playroom brittle with age, adorned with remnants of a forgotten childhood miniature furniture, fragments of broken toys scattered across the floor. And there, in the center, lay a familiar sight, a toy chest, its lid slightly cracked open, quietly radiating the same aura of malevolence that filled the rest of the house. "Open it, please," the chorus of voices implored, luring me closer. I knelt before the chest, my heart thrumming with dread. The air grew colder, each breath becoming a struggle as if the atmosphere itself conspired to siphon away my warmth. Fingers trembling, I reached to lift the lid. The moment I touched the rough wood, a jolt of electricity surged through my arm, shocking me back. The laughter intensified, echoing in a frenzy as if anticipating the wonder and horror that lay within. This wooden box held promises that twisted my very being, whispering secrets of those who had vanished into the void of this house. Sweat beaded on my forehead, and doubt clawed at my mind. What price must I pay to see? I murmured weakly into the oppressive silence. The dolls seemed to inch closer, their gazes piercing through me, each one a watcher and a witness. Finally, against every instinct that screamed for me to turn and flee, I summoned my resolve and pried the chest open. The lid creaked ominously as it revealed what lay within. A chaotic mix of broken trinkets, rotted paper, and tangled strings unfolded before my eyes, a testament to lost lives and shattered dreams. Each item told a story: a watch, an old photograph, a rusted key, all tinged with the shadow of despair. Then, nestled amidst the debris, something stirred. A small, glimmering object caught the flicker of the light. I leaned closer, drawn in by the mystery. It was a locket, its surface glistening as if it had been untouched by time. I reached for it, feeling the pull of a forgotten memory. "Help us!" remember the voices coaxed, softer now, laced with a hint of urgency. As soon as my fingers wrapped around the cold metal, the room erupted in chaos. The walls shook, and the laughter became a wailing chorus of anguish. Whispers morphed into screams. It was as if the house itself was in pain, roused by the awakening of the darkness that had been bound within. The locket sprang open, a flash of light illuminating the dim confines of the dollhouse, forcing me to squint. Within the frame was a face I recognized, my own, childlike, innocent, but a flicker of something sinister lurked behind the eyes. Simultaneously, the dolls around me began to writhe, their features contorting, morphing into distorted reflections of sorrow as they reached for me. No. I screamed as I stumbled back, losing my balance, the locket slipping from my fingers. It clattered against the floor, and at that moment, the world around me fractured. A creeping dread rose within the recesses of my mind, an ominous realization that this game was not just for the trapped spirits but was evolving into a much darker game for my very soul. Before I could decipher whether this was my past or a future I could avoid, the floor beneath me began to roar, shifting like quicksand. I felt an immense gravitational pull dragging me toward the chest, toward the relentless maw of the darkness. "Help us or you'll join us." The voices crescendoed, drowning me in their urgency. I fought against the unseen grasp, desperate to remember who I had been, desperate to escape the illusion of play that threatened to devour me whole, and just as I was about to be pulled into the depths of despair, I caught a glimpse of something vibrant breaking through the suffocating gloom, a crack in the wall, shimmering with a light that whispered of freedom. I had only a moment to make a choice: redouble my resolve and run toward the light, or succumb to the cries of the dolls and the torment of my fate. But as I lunged toward the crack, the darkness shifted violently, and a familiar laughter erupted, taunting and cruel, that echoed with the promise of a horrifying revelation: "You will play forever and we will always win." With that, the ground beneath me collapsed, hurling me into an abyss of endless shadows. The darkness swallowed me whole, a thick fog that constricted my chest and churned my thoughts into a suffocating haze. I fell, tumbling through a void echoing with the cruel laughter of the dolls, voices intertwining into a singular entity that reverberated ominously in my mind. Play with us forever, they beckoned, their words curling around my sanity like a noose. Just as abruptly as I had been swallowed by the darkness, I came crashing down onto a cold, damp surface, gasping for breath. I was in a cavernous cellar, the air thick with the scent of rot and decay. The flickering remnants of light from what could only be a single high window cast disturbing shadows that danced across the crumbling stone walls. Each shadow seemed to taunt my survival, a specter of all that had been lost. That I scrambled to my feet, heart racing, eyes wide. Seeking an escape, I scanned the room. A graveyard of forgotten memories lay strewn about. Discarded doll parts, shattered glass, and remnants of tattered fabric melted together, creating a grotesque tapestry that spoke of despair. Amongst this chaos, a strange sound began to manifest, a rhythmic tapping, deliberate and insistent. I followed it cautiously, the sound echoing eerily against the walls. What haunted this place? As I crept closer to the source, my breath hitched in my throat. At the far end of the cellar, I could see a small door, slightly ajar, with the tapping growing more frantic, as if something sought to be released or was desperately pleading for my attention. That I hesitated, memory drifting back to the locket, to the reflection of my innocent self. What awaited me beyond that door? Was it freedom or further despair? The doll's laughter still echoed in my ears, a reminder of the game I couldn't resist joining. With a mix of dread and morbid curiosity, I pushed the door open. It creaked ominously, revealing a narrow passage lit by faint, flickering lanterns. The walls glistened with moisture, and as I stepped inside, I felt their cold embrace wrap around me, clawing at my resolve. The tapping grew louder, more desperate as I advanced down the corridor. I ventured onward, past distorted faces leering at me from the shadows, dolls, too grotesque, too familiar. I recoiled, unable to suppress the rising bile in my throat. Each step felt like a betrayal of my senses, a step deeper into a realm that blurred the lines between reality and torment. Suddenly, the passageway opened into a large chamber, its size and sinister beauty intoxicating. At its center lay a makeshift altar adorned with creepy dolls, their eyes gleaming in the weak light. They formed a circle, surrounding an odd inscription carved into the stone floor, a summoning ritual, or perhaps a binding. The previous tapping had ceased, silenced by the weight of an unseen presence. "Help us, set us free," wheezing whispers cascaded from the walls, the same familiar voices that had beckoned me in the dollhouse. They poured from the shadows, swirling around me, like a thick mist inundated with pain and promise. A shudder ran through my body as an apparition formed in the center of the altar. A girl, silent and teetering on the edge of existence, appeared before me. Her features were tucked away in the softness of childhood, yet her eyes were hollow, devoid of light. "You must choose," she whispered, her voice barely breaking through the suffocating silence. "To break us or be bound to us." Desperation clawed at my throat. I stepped closer, instinctively wanting to reach out and comfort the lost child, when a chilling sensation swept over me. The walls vibrated, the laughter of the dolls crescendoing into a fervent chant. "Join us! Join us!" The air thickened with their unity, invading every crevice of my mind. In the mounting chaos, the girl swayed, struggling against unseen ties. I could feel her fear pressing into me, her small hand reaching out, fingers grazing my skin, bidding me to remember. My heart pounded as visions swirled, memories flashing like fragments of glass. A vivid image of my childhood flooded my thoughts, playing with dolls in the sunlight. My laughter mingling with a sinister shadow lurking just behind me, watching with hollow eyes. I recoiled, stumbling backward, the realization crashing upon me. These weren't just spirits, they were pieces lost from my own childhood, manifestations of desires and memories I had buried and forsaken. I gasped as the realization consumed me. "I can't let this happen." Just then, a cacophony of voices erupted from the walls and the dolls, my name woven into their desperate cries. "Help us, help her!" The girl's gaze intensified, pleading, demanding my choice in the face of inexorable dread. And all at once, an icy wind surged through the chamber, extinguishing the lanterns and flooding the room in suffocating darkness. Panic clawed at my chest as I felt the darkness press against me, wrapping its icy fingers around my throat, choking me. With one last gasping breath, I lunged toward the girl's voice, reaching for her in the void. Her outstretched hand pulsed with light, blinding in its intensity. But before I could touch her, the cold grasp tightened, pulling me back. Echoes of laughter swirled around me, suffocating my screams. "You cannot escape, you belong to us now." And just as I was dragged into the abyss of despair, the last remnants of my connection to the girl flashed like a dying stare, a singular promise shimmering amidst the darkness. "I will not let you go, I will find you." The shadows swallowed me whole, and darkness clasped its icy grip over my last flicker of hope, leaving only one haunting echo reverberating in the void. The play has just begun. In that suffocating abyss, where time and sanity themselves twisted like shadows, I felt the weight of eternity press against my soul. The coldness gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, and while darkness surrounded me, it wasn't void, it was alive, teeming with malevolent energy and whispers that clawed at my mind. The despair of countless others echoed in that wretched funnel, a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. As I struggled against the tide of darkness, the chilling realization washed over me. His was a realm of forgotten souls, each seeking to reclaim a sense of identity, a fragment of their past, but trapped forever within this accursed place. Their cries merged into a haunting symphony, a lullaby of grief that resonated deeper than horror. Suddenly, there was a shift. The ground beneath me trembled as something began to break through the blackness, radiant and monstrous. With a sickening crack, blinding light erupted, illuminating a squat, grotesque figure in the distance. Its misshapen form slithered and twitched, scales glimmering like shards of broken glass. I was entranced, both repulsed and unable to look away, as its mouth, lined with jagged teeth, unfurled into a chilling grin. "You sought answers, sweet child," it rasped in a voice that slithered through the darkness. "But knowledge carries the weight of regret, for every truth unlocks a new horror." With a jolt, I was swept into a vision, propelled through fragmented memories. I was a child again, but this time I stood before a decrepit dollhouse identical to the one I had wandered through before, and yet more sinister, more alive. The air crackled with energy, and I felt something pull at the core of my being. Gone understanding buried deep beneath layers of repression. "Every decision carved your path," the creature whispered, its voice reverberating around me. "Every scream, every tear, etched into this world where fantasies and nightmares collide." That I shuddered as grotesque images spiraled around meth dolls, their faces twisted into mockery as they played with a semblance of innocence, even as they shattered the lives of all who touched them. Each doll represented a choice, a moment in time where one could either laugh or cry, live or succumb to despair. I gasped as I realized each had been crafted from fragments of souls, a collection of children's joys and fears, mixed and molded into cursed effigies. In that moment, the creature's grin widened, revealing rows of glistening teeth. "You played their game once before. Now the game will play you." As flashes of my past transfixed, echoes of laughter mingled with the sinister snickers of the dolls. A jagged hollow opened beneath my feet, a portal of memories I never wished to confront. Whispers begged me to remember, the soft catch of breath and the faint rustle of fabric beckoned me down into darkness. Shapes writhed beneath the surface, those I loved, those I had lost. My heart raced with terror. "No, I see it. I cannot go back." I cried, but the ground splintered, and I felt myself being drawn into that chasm. Caught in a nightmare loop, I fell deeper until nauseating memories enveloped me. I was once again in that sunlit room filled with laughter, but all at once, the joyous bright colors faded, the laughter warped into screams, and the childlike love twisted into hatred. "Choose." The creature howled, its voice echoing with the cacophony of the damned. Just as I began to comprehend the depths of my choice, a rattling, violent thrumming echoed throughout the void. The dolls from the altar surged into view, somehow corporeal now, their stitched expressions racked with malice. They scattered around me, forming a grotesque audience of broken promises and twisted joys. Their beady eyes tracked my every movement. I spotted something among them, the dull, glimmering edge of a blade, embossed with the very symbol that had haunted my childhood dreams. I recoiled instinctively, the horror clicking painfully into place. It was a weapon forged by my own hand, a tool of denial I had buried in the guise of bravery. With a swift, desperate instinct, I lunged for the blade. But before I could reach it, the ground heaved, and the grotesque figures pressed closer, tightening their circle. "You cannot run from what you are," they cried, a symphony of voices rising to a shriek. The blade sang in my palm, and as the onslaught continued, the weight of darkness seemed to pull me further into its depths. "Let me make my choice," I shrieked, burning with defiance even as uncertainty gripped my heart, but the darkness only tightened its grip. From its center, the girl's voice rang out one last to me, a sound both sweet and heart-wrenching, weaving through the shadows. "You have not yet chosen, but time is running out," and in that breathless moment, the ground shattered, the world imploded, and dark tendrils reached up from the depths. Screams enveloped me, and as I was consumed, I caught one last glimpse of the girl, shimmering like a fading star. Her mouth moved, but the sounds were drowned in chaos. "What did you choose?" Before I could understand, before I could scream or fight, the darkness slammed down sharply, and everything went black. In that cold silence, something shifted, a heartbeat echoing a promise of more sinister games to come. And then, impossibly, I felt the chilling caress of the dolls surround me once more. Time to play forever. The silence dripped like icicles melting in the dawn, clinging to everything within the void. My body, now detached from time and space, floated in paralyzing terror. Yet in this eerie stillness, that heartbeat thudded on, a persistent reminder of the presence waiting just beyond my grasp. Gradually, tendrils of a more substantial darkness began to coalesce, forming shapes that lurked at the periphery of my understanding. They twisted and writhed, and a foul odor arose, reminiscent of forgotten corpses and the sweet rot of decay. I squinted into the blackness, desperate to grasp something solid, but only shadows danced before me, chiding me for my feebleness, and then I remembered I'd seized the blade, that glimmering relic of my past. With a rush of adrenaline, I envisioned it in my mind, hoping that visualization might rekindle its power. My fingers scrabbled in the darkness, feeling the weight of the memory, the familiar coldness that spoke of choices unmade. "Show me," I cried out, though fear gnawed at my resolve. To my horror, the shadows thickened and formed into grotesque faces, twisting with mockery and an unsettling hunger. They whispered secrets I had buried, fouling the air with their stale breath. "You thought you could leave us behind," they rasped, their voices an eerie choir, "but we are never far from you. You are ours now." Suddenly, from within the abyss, the dolls surged forth once more, crawling on unnaturally jointed limbs, their beady eyes glistening with a grin too wide for their porcelain faces. They wore expressions of familiarity and disdain, as if they had known me in a time I wished to forget. The very sight of them sent rivulets of ice coursing through my veins. "Playtime is an eternity," they sang in unison. "We've waited so long for you to join our game," and then the world shifted, dimensions bending and twisting, forming a grotesque dollhouse around me, as if plucked directly from a fever dream. I stood in the center, the fine china wallpaper faded and peeling, the flowered carpet frayed. Each room pulsed with an ominous energy, a rebellion against the dust of time meant to consume it. "Welcome back," a sweet, sing-song voice lilted from the shadow-cloaked corner of the living room. I turned, my heart hammering against my ribcage, to see a figure standing there, a girl in a tattered yellow dress, her face obscured by hair dancing like cobwebs in the wind. "They want to play, don't they?" "No," I gasped, knowing all too well what that meant. "I want play again. I want." "But you must," she insisted, stepping closer, the sunlight catching the glistening shards of her hollow eyes. "You're already part of their legacy. Every stitch, every tear, connects you to this nightmare." With an outstretched hand, she beckoned me toward her, but dread clawed at my throat. I took a step back, the odious sentiment coiling deep within my gut. "What do you want from me?" "Everything," she chirped sweetly, "but first, you must remember." Suddenly, the walls around me pulsed, exhaling memories interwoven with my nightmares. Each recollection burst like a balloon, releasing a confetti of horror. The sound of laughter turned to cries, the scent of freshly baked cookies melting into acrid smoke, the taste of joy soured by betrayal. I fell to my knees, choking on the weight of grief, my own soul mingling with the cries of the damned that echoed above and below me. Remember, she sang again, you are the architect of your fate. The ground trembled, fragments of a past life bleeding into the present. I saw faces those adored and scorned through the windows of the phantom dollhouse, their features contorted in agony. I clutched my head, trying to drown out the incessant ringing of their collective torment. But then, nestled among them, I caught a glimpse of a boy. His smile was bright and familiar, a beacon of innocence I thought long extinguished. I reached out to him, desperate to pull him from the throngs of agony. Stay away. Don't, the shadowy hands of the dolls lunged, dragging him back to their realm with a desperation that set my heart aflame. Struggling against the weight of despair, the girl tugged gently at my sleeve, her voice dropping to a breathy whisper. What if I told you there was a way to save him? The very essence of reality twisted as my heart fractured under the weight of the decision. No, anything but that. I cried, but the hunger grew, an insatiable beast clawing at my sanity, begging for release. Time is running out, she warned, the shadows closing in around me, serpentine and playful, sharpening into claws. You must decide. The house began to pulse in rhythm with my racing heart, the fabric of my choice stretching, teetering on the precipice of despair. I felt the walls vibrating, suffocating my thoughts like an unbreakable chain, and in the eye of the storm, I finally understood, there were no winners, only victims, and I was destined to join their ranks. Choose. The shadows growled, their hands tightening. Or lose everything. With my mind ablaze and heart racing, I grasped the edge of clarity, flaring like a candle fighting the suffocating dark. But as I prepared to make the greatest decision of my life, the house trembled violently, and the floor opened beneath me once more. A yawning chasm of despair awaited. No. I screamed. I won't lose him. I will fight. Before I could even blink, the ground swallowed me whole, and all was darkness again. The heartbeat thumped louder, resounding like a war drum in my ears until I felt one last grip on reality, and I was thrown from the void into a new realm, a corridor lined with screaming dolls. Welcome to the playroom, they cackled in unison, their eyes glistening with an insatiable hunger, their jagged teeth sharp with anticipation, and then in an instant, the walls began to close, the deafening howls rising higher, and my choice hung heavy in the air. It trembled, just for a heartbeat, before ripping apart into chaos. Playtime, they shrieked, is just beginning. The walls of the playroom pulsed with a malignant energy, an amalgam of forgotten laughter and nightmarish cries that encased me within a claustrophobic embrace. Dolls with cracked porcelain skin stood sentinel in every corner, their wickedly painted smiles growing wider, revealing rows of jagged teeth that dripped with anticipation. Each time the walls vibrated, their laughter grew more frenetic, echoing in a wild cacophony that threatened to overpower my senses. Join us, they chanted, their voices worming into the recesses of my mind, filling me with visions of vivid, blood-soaked memories that had long since unsheathed. I staggered back, clutching my temples as flashes of past and present collided. The boy's face was etched into my consciousness, a beacon of innocence now shadowed by the encroaching darkness. Let him be. I won't go through this again. I cried, forcing the words through a throat constricted by terror. The dolls paused, their collective gaze piercing through me. A hush fell, pregnant with an unspeakable tension. Every game has rules. The girl in the tattered yellow dress began to twirl, her movements eerily graceful as she stomped the ground, sending cracked spider-webbing through the floorboards. And all players must comply, or the game gets dangerous. With a sudden jolt, the atmosphere shifted. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching from the corners of the room, pushing me further into submission. The air thickened, each breath a labored effort as an overwhelming sense of dread clawed at my insides. Shadows elongated, curling upwards like serpents eager to ensnare their prey. What happens if I refuse? I whispered, heart racing despite my attempt to be defiant. Silence swallowed my words, replaced by the oppressive sound of my heartbeat. which now synced with the rhythm of the floor beneath my feet as it shuddered in response. The dolls erupted into maniacal laughter, the sound sharp and jagged, as if icing crumbled in a relentless storm. The girl stopped her dance and raised a finger to her lips, an indication to Hushan invitation that chilled my blood. Then you shall learn what happens when one defies the game. Her voice dipped into a low, sinister timbre, mirroring the shadows that lunged toward me with renewed fervor. I felt a sudden sharp tug at my shoes, the floor itself seeming to ripple like an unseen creature stirring beneath the surface, eager to pull me down into its depths. No. I screamed, leaping back just as the first wave of dolls surged forward, their outstretched arms reaching for my limbs like hungry ghouls. I felt their coldness brush against my skin, a sensation so foreign and nightmarish that instinct kicked in, propelling me toward the far wall, where images of my past flickered eerily in the wallpaper, recollections of joy distorted into madness. Turn back, turn back. They whispered through cracked lips while a shadow loomed just behind me, shaped like the very essence of my fears, but there was no turning back. The shadows pulsed and danced, beckoning me into their dark embrace, where sanity slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. In desperation, I grasped the blade now dulled by dread, the only remnant of defiance I had left, and steeled myself to confront the encroaching horror. Go ahead, use it, the girl smirked, her eyes glimmering in delight. But know this, once the game starts, there are no exits. Only the depths that consume the weak. Determination surged through me as I took a deep breath and charged towards the shadows, wielding the blade as a beacon against the abyss. I swung wildly, cutting through the fabric of unseen hands, but instead of carving a path, I only spurred the fury of the dolls. They screeched in unison, their voices a menacing choir, echoing through the turmoil like a twisted lullaby. A sharp pain flared in my side, and I stumbled back, realizing too late that one of the dolls had managed to break through my defenses, its porcelain face cracking wider to reveal a gaping maw, teeth stained with memories, a life extinguished. Then came the realization. Heavier than stone. The shadows began to swirl around me, the walls liquefying, and an overwhelming wave of despair washed over my mind. The images in the wallpaper broke free, alive with twisted and contorted faces of those I had once loved, their eyes pleading for sanctuary but only displaying the torment I had wrought upon them. Make your choice. The girl sang, her voice dripping with malice. Or lose more than you can imagine. The world spun as warmth seeped from my side where the doll had bit me. My vision blurred, and I felt the very essence of time constricting around me, each second stretching further into the void. The walls shrieked, yearning for my decision, swirling with haunting laughter that echoed the futility of my fight. In a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, I glimpsed the boy's face again, now mirroring my own terror as he drifted further away, swallowed by the shadows. With a cry of desperation echoing into the void, I lunged forward, the blade gripped tightly. But just as it found purchase in the air, the walls began to shake violently, fracturing the unity of the house around me, revealing darkened voids that promised to swallow me whole. And then, a chilling realization sank in as I felt fingertips clawing desperately at my ankles, pulling me back into a past I desperately sought to escape. Playtime, the dolls rasped in unison, is only the beginning. A deafening roar erupted, and the room imploded into a swirling maelstrom, dragging me deeper into the hungry darkness, as I screamed out into the void, a horror unlike any other closing in, leaving only a single thought: what if this time I couldn't fight my way out? Everything had devolved into chaos. The walls of the dollhouse rippled in time with my racing heart, pulsating with an ancient, grotesque energy that seemed to relish my fear. The countless dolls huddled in dark corners, their hollow eyes gleaming with anticipation, silently watching as I teetered on the edge of the abyss, helpless and desperate for escape. Playtime is just getting started, taunted the girl in the tattered yellow dress, her laughter a dissonant melody that echoed through the charged air, sending shivers racing down my spine. You'll be the perfect addition to our game. With every word she spoke, I felt the darkness wrap tighter around my heart, suffocating any hope that lingered. The voices of the dolls surged, a cacophony begging me to join them in their eternal game, a game that seemed designed to consume my very soul. I fought against the invisible tendrils tightening around me, trying to grasp for the warmth of memories long forgotten, but every touch brought forth a wave of torment that washed over me like ice water. Remember, whispered the shadows, weaving through my mind like smoke, carrying the hints of chilling memories that echoed with guilt and sadness. All you have to do is play, just play with us. Driven by desperation, I lunged for the blade still clutched in my trembling hands. I had to cut the strings binding me to this nightmare. But as the blade glinted ominously in the dim light, I was struck by the memory revisiting my mind, faces I knew, and voices I had long buried. Each scream, each plea melding into chaotic discord, framing the very essence of what I had once cherished. How long had I been ensnared by their demands? How far had I fallen into the depths of this twisted play? A shriek broke the din as one of the dolls lunged forward, its porcelain body crashing into mine with weight and force. I stumbled back, breath hitching in my throat as panic clawed at my insides. I could feel the darkness inside the dolls seeking to pull me in, to weave me into its malevolent tapestry. I swung the blade wildly, aiming for the hollow eyes, and for an instant, they flickered back in fear as I found purchase. I could sense the vibrations of a heavy tension lingering, as though something desperate shifted in the air. You defy us. The girl shrieked, her face a mask twisted with rage. You'll regret this. You are ours. But as I drove the blade deeper, an unholy light erupted, illuminating the room, casting shadows against the walls and revealing dozens of faces, all the children, all the lost souls I had seen in those distant memories. Each one bore the same essence of innocence shattered by this cursed dwelling. No, I whispered, horrified. I suddenly understood, we were all connected. These weren't just victims, they were pieces of my own shattered self. Long ago, we had played together, innocence entwined through joy. But some dark force had tainted that, consuming the laughter until only agony remained. Set us free, the children begged, their voices melding into a haunting melody, rising to a fever pitch, stronger than the shadows trying to ensnare my mind. Remember, find us and set us free. In that moment of clarity among the chaos, I could no longer deny the blade was more than a weapon, it was a key, a tool that could unlock the chains binding us together. With renewed resolve, I whispered the names of those I had lost, of my true self buried beneath layers of grief and fear. I wielded the blade not as a weapon of destruction, but as a means of liberation, hacking away at the darkness that clung desperately to my soul. Just as the darkness began to retract, and the shadows swayed as if caught in a desperate dance, a voice shattered through the tumult. We are playing, forever, and our game will never end. With one swift movement, I plunged the blade into the threshold, severing the bonds holding me captive. A jolt of energy coursed through me, and I felt the rush of air. The shadows shrieked in agony as a light blossomed brighter than ever before, illuminating all the corners of the house. But as the light flooded the room, a chilling realization gripped me. The dolls began to melt, their forms twisting and warping, but in that moment, I recognized them not just as entities of malice, but as my own fragmented existence, reflections of my forgotten joys and suppressed sorrows. No. I screamed, horror clawing at my throat as I reached out toward the light, toward the warmth of freedom. Not like this. I'll save you. But it was too late. The echoing laughter crescendoed into one gut-wrenching scream, a final chord of multiple souls converging into the abyss, and the house began to collapse. Flashes of warmth resonated within, and I was overcome by a sense of belonging, but it twisted malevolently. Perhaps this was not freedom, after all. The world darkened once more as the house imploded, enveloping me in a choking void, the last remnants of laughter echoing into oblivion. Remember our gay men in that eternal darkness. As I floated between realms, one thought resonated through my mind. Not every escape is truly freedom. Sometimes, the cursed play just takes on a new form. And there it was, a haunting lullaby. To play forever was my new fate. Play again, my dear, the girl whispered sweetly, and in the infinite night, I knew I was never truly alone.